What the hell? Hold on. Oh, there we go.
The Earnestly Speaking podcast is a show that is founded on free-flowing conversation and may at times venture into mature subjects. Listener discretion is advised.
Yeah, Earnestly Speaking podcast. Let's get it. I'm a giant in New York, in Miami carry heat. So much more in store, my product can flood the street. Opinion Nation Godfather, CEO. Puff in the late 90s, gon' see me blow. Oh. Got my hustle on, no imitation of that. Army of untouchables, Opinion Nation staff. Never an off season, homie, check the numbers. Heart throb in my own right, supplying southern comfort. Earnestly speaking, my ego is well fed. Earnestly speaking, you're too feeble and no threat. See, I'm like a hurricane, you're a mild breeze. Earnestly speaking, leaving Eli a dynasty.
Earnestly Podcast coming to you March 27th, 2025. Could not hear the intro once again. I don't know what's going on here with my my computer right here. We're talking NBA here now with my man Greg Hrinya weekly. We actually got it in this week, man. I was a little worried because as I told you before the week started that could be a little tricky because it is spring break for my kids, and I gotta be a good dad. We got activities planned and stuff, beach days and pool days, and we may go skating some point this week also too before school starts back up. But we have a nice 30-45 minutes podcast planned for you guys here. Greg, how you doing? How's your late March?
I'm doing well. I'm glad we got it in because there's a lot going on. So good time of year for sports. I mean, this specific day, you got baseball starting, you got NBA,
I can't wait.
You've got March Madness, you got hockey if you like it. I mean, you've got pretty much everything except the NFL right now. So
by the way, we are by the way, we are streaming live right now on Facebook, on YouTube, on X. You guys, of course, follow me on YouTube. Follow the show on YouTube. We have our own channel now, Earnest Speak Podcast, at Earnest Speak Pod on YouTube, on TikTok at Earnest Speak Pod as well too. All the clips of the show on my Twitter page at EJ Christian 7, and my Facebook page. Of course, you do follow me on Facebook as well too. Also, we typically talk basketball on this podcast, but I have to ask you and weigh in on this. Your thoughts. You do like football.
Sure.
So I guess you are a Giants fan because you live in the market. Everybody in this podcast know I'm a Giant fan, die hard. Name my oldest son Eli, so you know that. Russell Wilson signed with the Giants 2 days ago. I'm still confused about the direction of this team going forward. Now, I've said on record for years, people know this, that I do love Russell Wilson. I think he's one of my favorite players in the league for the last 10, 15 years. But I've also been very clear about, as a Giant fan, what I want to see in terms of the direction. And the reason why I was not for the whole Matthew Stafford thing or the Aaron Rodgers thing is that not because they're not good quarterbacks, or Russell Wilson for that matter too also. It's not because they're not good, is that we're talking about a timeline here. We're not a team in position to compete for a Super Bowl. We're not the Steelers, who is 10-7, and they need a piece away, and then they get that piece, they're in the conversation. No, the Giants are 3-14 last year. They're a bottom 3 team in the league, have been one of the worst teams in football for the last 14 years since Super Bowl 46. And then you go and get Russell Wilson, who, again, good player still, even though he's on a down in his career, a good player. He's going to win you a couple more games than he did last year, which doesn't really help the team long term. Because my thought is I'm looking at this team for the next 5 to 10 years, not next 1 to 2. Now, does this mean they don't draft the quarterback on top with the third pick in the draft? I don't know. Maybe they still draft Shador Sanders, or if miraculously Cam Ward does fall in the draft, probably not, because he'll be probably gone to Tennessee in the first pick. But I'm left more confused because I thought when they signed James Winston last week, I thought that's the move he make, because he's a guy who'll be a mentor. He's ready to go. He's a guy. He's a good bridge quarterback. Russell Wilson still thinks he's a top 20 guy in the league. So that kind of screws with the timeline, in my opinion, anyway. But I could be wrong here. So what are your thoughts? What are people saying in the market there up in Jersey?
Yeah, to me, it seems like they don't really have a plan. I mean, I would have imagined that if they brought Russell Wilson in, they wouldn't have brought Winston in. They would have drafted a quarterback, and then you could have seen, like, okay, you have the bridge guy who's going to carry you for a year, maybe 2 if things go great. But right now, it looks like they're throwing stuff at the wall, hoping that something sticks, hoping that one of Winston or Wilson will make them competitive, and maybe they draft an Abdul Carter or a Travis Hunter at 3. Because I feel like if they were going to go with a quarterback, why would you then have 3 quarterbacks on your roster and then not draft a player that's going to help you this year? I thought the most damaging thing was actually the postseason press conference from Mara when he came out and said, like, I'm losing patience, because it basically told the GM and the coach, like, we've got to make moves to win now.
Yeah.
And, you know, and look, maybe the plan is we'll be bad again this year and we'll get Arch Manning the following year, which is probably a lot better than either the quarterbacks coming out this year. But what does that mean for the GM and the coach if they are on borrowed time, basically? So that's why, to me, it doesn't seem like there's any clear plan. Like when you look at the NBA, you say, like, okay, like I know what the Wizards are doing. I know they're tanking. I know they're getting a lot of young players to the draft. They added a couple of veterans who can mentor them. The plan is to be bad for a couple of years. They'll get lottery picks and they'll restock the cupboard that way. The Giants, I'm not really sure what they're doing, like from a quarterback perspective. And, look, if they get Carter or Hunter, those are arguably like will be the best player from this draft. So it's not as if they're getting a bad player. I just don't know where they're going and what their plans are for the short term and the long term.
This is what I hate about the John Mara comment about that when he said it last year. I'm losing patience. You're the idiot that decided to extend Daniel Jones. Everybody with a brain cell knew that Daniel Jones was not worth an extension. You franchise that guy and you take a chance. Okay. Look, the Saquon Barkley thing is not as big a deal for me because even though I wanted him to stay and I knew that if they didn't keep him, Philadelphia will take him. It's just a convoluted of things that happen that make it look bad. Ultimately, Saquon Barkley was not going to help your team long term because it's a running back. He helps the Eagles because they just need another piece. Okay, they're a really great team anyway. So, but it looks bad because everything's happened since then. 2,000-yard season, win the Super Bowl, the whole night, yada, and everything being, of course, broadcasted on Hard Knocks. If Saquon Barkley goes to the Raiders, no one gives a fuck. You get what I'm saying? So it's about the avalanche of things that happen after that. The TV, the Hard Knocks thing, and then him going to the biggest rival, and then he gets 2,000 yards, and then they win the Super Bowl. It looks bad. But if Saquon goes to a team that's less than, no one cares.
Yeah, I don't think people are blaming. I mean, the people are blaming the Giants for letting Saquon go because it's low-hanging fruit to pick on them and to basically mock them, like if you're in the media or if you're a talking head. The reality is that if he were running behind the Giants' offensive line, he would have rushed for half the yardage, half the touchdowns, and probably gotten hurt. So, I mean, like,
right.
It's not a good comparison putting him behind. The Eagles had one of the top 2 lines in the league, them Detroit. So, I mean, like, I don't think that what he did in Philadelphia, you could say, oh, if he were on the Giants, he would have done exactly that. I don't think he would have done anything close to that just because of the nature of their line.
And Greg, a 3-14 season would have been a 6-11 season at best.
Yeah.
What does that do for the team long term? Nothing. Yeah. So like, what are we doing here? So like, but the mistake was made. The mistake was made more so in giving Daniel Jones. Now it really ended up being 2 years, but it was a 4-year deal. The only thing I ever defended on that contract was the fact that I defended the structure of that contract. If you're going to pay that guy that money, make sure you can get out of it within 2 years, which they did. That was a smart move. But he should have gotten that. He wasn't good enough. Even the one good year he had 2 years ago, Daboll's first year as head coach, he was not good enough, in my opinion, to warrant that kind of a contract. I'm sorry. Even a 2-year deal. So that's what it is. So my fear is if they don't take Shedeur Sanders. Now, a lot of folks are very soft on Shedeur Sanders. And then he goes somewhere else and balls out in 5 years. And then, like, we could have that guy, but we try to be cute about it and, outthink the room. And now what? We're still in this shithole we are now. And meanwhile, Shedeur Sanders has 3 whole pros, is taking his team to the playoffs every year. And we're still in the same spot we've been for the last 15 years. That's my fear. I still hope they go quarterback because I ultimately that is the need they have. But I would have said, before Tuesday, I would have said, yeah, this thing's Shedeur of the 3rd pick. After Tuesday, I'm not so sure. They can still do it. It's still possible, but I don't know if the optics say otherwise, in my opinion.
Yeah, I feel like Mara's comments, mainly to Shane, were like, you need to put players on the field that can win now. And so they might look at it and say, Travis Hunter is going to help us win now. Whereas if we draft Shedeur Sanders, he's sitting for a year. And it's like, that doesn't help our team this year. And so that's why I like, again, you want to see them do something sustainable for the future. And if that's developing a quarterback, then develop the quarterback. And if you have a bad season, so be it. But like, it's very like penny wise, dollar foolish sort of thinking that like,
Right.
oh,
I agree.
we're going to sign all these retread quarterbacks, hope one of them is good, and what, win 7 games? You know, I
That's
mean,
what I'm saying. Russell Wilson will move the needle. Yes, he will move the needle, but you'll be a 7-win team. Is that satisfying to you, John Mara? 7-10? Probably not. So what are we doing? Like, what are we doing? Like commit to a rebuild. Commit to a real rebuild. That's all I'm saying.
And based on like the talk radio shows here, I think one of the takeaways is that John Mara is not just disappointed by how bad they've been for an extended period of time, but how irrelevant they've been for an extended period of time, especially like in this market. You know, I think there's probably some jealousy about, oh, the Jets had Rodgers, and even though they weren't a good team, they were dominating the headlines all year. And he looks at it and says, we're the proud New York Giants, and you know, we're just an afterthought because we've become so bad. Maybe there's not a market for rebuilding, but like, that's not a good way to run a franchise.
No, and that's stupid because the real New York Giants in the past would have done the right way and rebuild the right way.
Yeah.
Not trying to fast track this thing and then make yourself now worse, you know, worse for wear.
Yeah.
Because you made that mistake 2 years ago with Daniel Jones. Stop. Okay? Do the rebuild, commit to it, and call it a day. That's where I'm at. So, hey, that's my football talk for today on the podcast. Greg, good job on that one. Greg, you killed it on that one. All right. First things first, NBA. Gene Butler 2 days ago returned to the Heat. Returned to Miami rather. No Steph Curry in that game. Heat win in a blowout. You were impressed with that game. I told you in the text that look, fine, I'll take the win. We need the win. Steph didn't play though, so I'm not going to make a big deal about that. A lot of folks though, I was listening to Bobby Marks the other day, yesterday. A lot of folks are kind of like disenchanted with the Heat and their fans in embracing Jimmy Butler when the guy, and this is something to this, the guy literally quitting your team, demanded a trade, say I wouldn't play another play until he gets traded, and then this left. And the fact they gave him a tribute video and then he was still being cheered and whatnot. Bobby Marks said something. I was going to play the video of that, but I don't want to ruin my computer today. Mm-hmm. He said it was disappointing that Heat fans would actually still embrace the guy, even though they, he did what he did. And I kind of feel 2 ways about that because on one hand, it's like I appreciate, as a Heat fan myself, I appreciate the fact that we've won the 2 finals with him, almost a third, in 2022. But the rawness of the situation this is not a year removed. This is actually literally like weeks removed from the situation. It was a very, very public battle, and again, this is something the Heat don't normally go through. The Heat are very buttoned up when it comes to these kind of things, and the fact that it was as public as it was a shock in itself. Does Bobby Marks have a point about that?
Yeah, I mean, I can look at it from both standpoints. I mean, it does seem kind of weird, so I can see where he's coming from, but I really don't have a problem with what the Heat or their fans did because Butler gave them very good years. I mean, like, this is as good as they've been since they had LeBron, Wade, Bosh. I mean, like, he put them in contention for championships pretty much on his back.
Right.
And you could say the reason why they didn't get over the top was because Pat Riley didn't give him enough help, which, is, I guess, a conversation for another day. Yeah. But also, like, by doing the tribute video, it's like, it's probably also a message to other players in the league, other agents that, like, look, even though things didn't end the way that we wanted them to, you can still come here, have a good career. We'll take care of you, that sort of thing. So, I mean, like, I'm never opposed to a team, I guess, doing that sort of thing if it means maybe recruiting a player down the line. So, I mean, like, I'm not going to hammer the Heat for that, given the success that he basically took them to on his own back. I mean, it wasn't as if, like, there were 3 Hall of Famers with Bosh, LeBron, and Wade. It was basically him, a young Bam Adebayo, and a bunch of guys trying to figure it out. So, I mean, like, in my opinion, he gets a lot of credit for that. I mean, even the last run they made, I mean, Hero missed that playoff series. So,
yeah. Some of the lingo coming out of that too. Also, one thing about Butler, I give him, he's a bit of a kook, but I give him credit for this. He's very transparent. He was on record saying that him and Pat Riley don't talk. They have issues. He didn't mince any words about that. And so I'm looking at the we did a trade deadline podcast a month ago, and we were kind of giving our opinions on the trade itself and where does it go. And you and I both agreed that we didn't understand this trade from the Golden State's perspective, of course, at the time. Okay, we understood from the Miami perspective, of course, and we liked the Heat's perspective. Now, having said that, now the records don't necessarily quantify what our beliefs are. the Warriors, I believe, are now 16-4, or maybe 16-5 with Butler since the trade, and the Heat have gone 16-14 since the trade. But my argument was more so not so much a short term as a long term.
Yeah.
Like Jimmy Butler's in the right situation because he's in the right role. Okay, the Heat are still playing team even with Butler. They're marginally better. They're probably 5-6 wins better, but it's still a 7 or 8 seed in the Eastern Conference, even with Jimmy Butler in the lineup. Okay, whereas Jimmy Butler in Golden State is in the right role. He's a number 2 guy behind Steph Curry. Even so, I'm not picking the Warriors win the West. I don't think they go to the conference finals. Now, if Jimmy Butler is a piece to get another piece, we can have that conversation going forward. But I'm still 10 toes down on where I was a month ago, that long term, I like the trade.
Yeah, I'm in the same spot because Miami was not winning a title with Jimmy Butler, and he was just getting older and more expensive based on the cap going up. So I'm not in favor of overspending to keep guys that are 35, 36, 37 years old, and they weren't winning a title with him anyway. It's not like he was going to put him in contention. So I like the idea of trading to get a guy who's 6-7 years younger and some other assets. And look, it's not like Wiggins has played badly. The problem is that he hasn't played that much. I feel like, and this is kind of the problem in Golden State. Like, if he can get on the floor, he's still an impactful player. I mean, the past week, he's actually played really well. Even the last game that they won, where he had, I don't know, like 10 or 12 points and his shooting numbers were terrible. He was getting rebounds, assists, steals, blocks. Like, he was impacting the game from a number of different ways. So, I mean, given that you weren't winning with Butler, I look at it more the same from like a long-term perspective. Like, no, he's not a star player, but if you find a star player, you can certainly put that guy around him with some of the other infrastructure you have in place, and you could see a pathway for success. He's not the alpha that Jimmy Butler was, but Jimmy Butler is not in a spot now to carry a team at 35, 36 that he was 3-4 years ago.
Yeah, and you kind of got younger by 6-7 years. Like, Wiggins is 29, I think, 29 years old still. Jim Butler is 35, turned 36. You got younger. Yeah, is Butler a better player? Probably so. Still not much better though, to be honest with you. I mean, versus the roles. And I think Miami is still a destination for stars. I mean, again, I'm looking at Kevin Durant, who's having a phenomenal year. We'll touch on that in a second. That if he comes here to Miami this summer, that could be the Heat right back in business again with that roster. But no, I still like the move. I still like the move in the long term. Jimmy Butler was not going to help the team. You can't pay that guy $60 million to be an 8 seed. I'm sorry, you can't. It's. I'll say it again. I told my dad this on the podcast a couple weeks ago, and he agreed with me. It's malpractice. It's fucking malpractice, in my opinion, to do that.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I don't see where Golden State's going either. They could be a quick out because, we were talking about this with the Lakers about not having like a big man. Like, he doesn't like solve their problems, and I've never really been a fan of going older. I feel like it's a young man's game, a young athletic man's game. Like, when we talk about the Bucks later, it's like their whole goal is built around 2 guys that are north of 30. And that's especially one who plays a very athletic style of game. It's like a hard way to go through a month and a half of grueling postseason. And I don't even know that Steph and Jimmy would get through a month and a half, physically, just based on injuries that they've had and all that. Plus you factor in that, there's no big man in there to help them out. Like, I don't look at it and say like that trade made them some sort of title contender. I think they're more likely to get bounced in the first round than they are to go to the finals.
Yeah, I actually agree with you on that one. Again, if this is a move to get to another move later on, sign me up. But to me, it's a nice, cute story for the last month, though. But ultimately, are they going to beat the top 4 teams in the Western Conference? No, they're not doing. That's not going to happen. So there's that. All right. Now, withstanding last night's loss, though, one team I've been kind of eyeballing. I know that I think they're still 10, or maybe are they 10 in the West now? The Suns. It's still in the West.
There are 3 teams vying. It's funny the way the West is going. There's 3 teams vying for 2 spots to get into the play-in, and there's 3 teams vying for 2 spots to get above the play-in. So
Right.
when you look at the standings, it's kind of unique how they pretty much all have something to play for.
So Phoenix now, we've been obviously we both agreed that they have been easily the most disappointing team in the this past year. But lately they've been playing some good basketball. As of late, right now they're number 10 in the West currently, but they're what? I mean, they're gonna be a playing team because they're 6.5 games behind for the 6th spot, so they're not catching the Clippers for that. But I still think you look at the teams in the playing situation, the Warriors, the Wolves, Kings, and Suns, all things equal, if they're healthy. Am I wrong to think that they could be a weird dark horse? Like, I don't want to play these guys' team in the playoffs. Like, so for example, obviously, let's say the standings stay the way they are now. Like, they'll play Sacramento in the first playing game. I think they beat Sacramento in the playing game. Okay, and then they'll play the winner of the Warriors and Wolves, and I can't rule out them in a 1-game sample being one of those teams. Then you get to the playoffs as an 8 seed. Look, I have no bones that they'll be OKC, but Phoenix is the one of those teams in that bottom bracket that all things equal, Durant's healthy, Booker's healthy, whatever. You don't want to play him. Am I talking out of turn here?
I don't know that you necessarily want to play them. Granted, I don't know that you want to play any of the teams in the West because the depth of talent is so good. I mean, I'm also not conceding that they're even going to get into the play-in. Like, that's if the season ended today. But again, I go back to my trusty, strength of schedule that's left, and Phoenix is still number 1 in the league.
You love that thing, don't you?
I do. So I mean, like, here are the opponents left for Phoenix. They play OKC, they play Boston, they play Houston, they play the Knicks, they play the Warriors, they play the Timberwolves. That's 7 of their 9 games. Their 2 quote unquote easy games are the Spurs and the Kings. And that Kings game will be like a playoff game. So just because the Kings aren't a good team, that doesn't mean that's not going to be a hard game for them. So they really have one maybe cupcake game against San Antonio. Whereas you look at Dallas, they have the 18th strength of schedule. They play the Clippers twice, the Lakers, the Grizzlies, and that's it. So the other 6 games they have Toronto, Brooklyn, Chicago, Orlando, Atlanta. Not that those teams are like pushovers, but I mean, like, there's a couple wins that they could get in there. Whereas, like, you look at Phoenix, like, if they don't play really well, like, they could easily lose 4 or 5 of those games, 6 of those games.
Right.
And before you know it, like, it's just the schedule. It's not that they haven't been playing well. It's just that the schedule is what it is. I think that if they played Sacramento in a 1-game series, they'd probably beat Sacramento by 20. So it's not that they're not a better team than Sacramento. It's just that Sacramento has a slightly easier schedule, but, like, not an easy schedule by any stretch either. I mean, it's, they still have to play Cleveland, Denver, Indiana, the Clippers. So, I know Dallas got AD back. He didn't play the last game.
So I mean, Dallas is the only team they're really battling against to stay in the play-in. Portland's 3 games behind, but they're starting to fade a little bit now. They lost 2 in a row, 6 last 10. So they're starting to fade now late here. So,
but as far to your point about playing OKC in the first round, I think OKC would crush them.
Oh no, without question.
Because I think that, like, you could throw Chet at Durant, you could throw Hartenstein on Durant if he gets switched onto him. You could put Jalen Williams on Durant. Like, I feel like and even Shea is super long. I just feel like they have so many, like, athletic bodies that they could really make Durant's life miserable because the best that Phoenix will be able to do is the 8th seed. Like, they have to win 2 games to get the 8th seed, and OKC is locked into 1. So the absolute best case scenario, even if Phoenix were to, like, somehow miraculously win out, they're still playing. The best thing they can do is still OKC, and I just think that they have so many bodies that they can throw at him specifically.
I would feel a little better if they had a shot to get the 8th seed now before the play-in. I would say, okay, maybe you could get a 7 spot, and maybe you draw a Houston or Denver, but because they're 6.5 back of that 8th spot in the West, there's no shot. But I will say though, like, Phoenix is going to be that team though that, like, you still don't want to play them because they can be a little bit frisky there because, I mean, KD, since you want KD, he's still having a phenomenal year.
Yeah, you still don't want to play Durant. I mean, even though the rest of their roster, like, Booker is still a great player, but I mean, Durant is, I mean, last night his problem was that he didn't shoot enough when they lost to the Celtics. I mean, I would have prioritized getting him 35 shots and seeing where it landed because, he could have easily gone for 50 the way that he was shooting last night. And I just feel like he got lost in the game plan to, like he had 16 points in the first quarter and then they didn't bring him back until 5:55 left in the second. I think he only took 2 shots the rest of the half. Yeah. And it's like he just lost all his rhythm that way.
I think ultimately this is a showcase for Durant. I think the more he shows how good he looks, I think his price tag may go up a little bit, this summer because there's no doubt he's on the move after the season.
Yeah, but the one thing I will say is that I don't think Matt Ishbia has any appetite for rebuilding. So I think he might be willing to move Durant, but he's going to want like players back that are going to help them win, or that can be used to acquire another player that's going to help them win. Like I don't see him just like saying, "Oh, we'll take Duncan Robinson, another salary, Alec Burks, and like 3 first-round picks."
Yeah.
Even though Durant is in the driver's seat because he's in the last year of his contract. So I mean, like, I don't know how much they can expect to get for him. So that's why it's a tricky spot. You think that it's a lock that he gets traded, and I would too, because that's basically what they've signaled. But given that he's in the last year of his contract, like, how much can they expect to get for him?
Yeah.
So if you can't get a lot for him, does it make sense to even trade him, knowing that you would then be going backwards?
He has 1 more year in his deal, right? Or 2 more years in his deal.
He'll be a free agent at the end of next season.
Okay, so is that the expiring contract?
If he doesn't sign an extension, he could.
That might be the most like valuable, the most valuable expiring deal in history in the NBA. Seriously, because Kevin Durant still you put him in these top teams here, put him in the Knicks, put him in these teams that are right there in the mix. They're finals contender because he's that good still. He's still that good.
Yeah, and we'll see how Durant chooses to play it. Like, does he do what he did with the Nets, sign the extension, and then demand a trade because you want to lock in the money first? Because if he plays next year without a new contract and he winds up getting hurt, then there's risk involved in doing that. Whereas there's no risk if he signs an extension.
Right. I can see him signing the Jimmy Butler type of deal, like a 2-3 year thing. Yeah,
that would make sense.
Now it's gonna be weird picking on this team for a little bit because this team has had multiple like 12+ game winning streaks throughout the year. But they and granted they've now won 2 in a row since the little slump. The Cavaliers lost 4 in a row up until like this past weekend. Again, they won 2 in a row since then, so things are improving again though. But again, kind of weird timing to be losing 4 games in a row though, as they get into this end stretch before the playoffs. And you also have the Celtics right on their heels now, who won 7 in a row, 9 last 10. Only 4.5 back in the for the number 1 seed in the East. Should we be concerned about the Cavs a little bit?
I'm not concerned at all based on their skid. I don't think that they'd be favored to beat Boston. Like, Boston to me is still like head and shoulders the team to beat, even though Cleveland's got the better record. Like, I'm just looking at it from a matchup standpoint. Like, I don't know that Garland and Mitchell will be able to guard guys on the Celtics, and I feel like you can pretty much take 1 through 4 and they can all guard Mitchell and Garland. So I mean, like, you can have White, you can have Holiday, you can have Tatum, you can have Brown. So I mean, like, I feel like all those guys will make the Cavs' life miserable. I think the Cavs, I think it's a 2-team race. I'd be shocked if, in the second round they wound up getting upset by like Indiana or something, and Indiana goes back to the Eastern Conference Finals.
Yeah.
So I feel like they're in a good place to still go to the conference finals, but regardless of this stretch where they've struggled, even if they had won those, some of those games, it wouldn't change my opinion just because I'm just looking at it like player to player and how they match up. And I'm not going to use anything that Boston's done in the regular season against them because, like, I feel like their season is going to be the postseason. Like, they're going to be looking to repeat.
Yeah, they're title bust.
Yeah, exactly. So when you're title or bust, I'm not going to necessarily say, oh, they only beat this tanking team by 2 points or by 6 points or 8 points or whatever. It's like, look, their goals are getting to the postseason healthy. The Cavs still have to prove themselves, but I don't, whether or not they had won those games, that wouldn't have necessarily changed my opinion on how the season was going to go. Like, I still think the Celtics are the head and shoulders favorite, but I mean, you don't know. A guy sprains his ankle or something like that. Granted, Tatum sprained his ankle and then they won by 30 last night without him against the Suns. So, I mean, they're still a good team without him. They have so much depth. So, but I think that it's those 2 teams in the East, but I still think that there's a hierarchy there. And I would still take Boston, and nothing really, I think, that's happened in the last month or going forward would really change my mind on that. And that's not to say the Cavs haven't had a wonderful season. I just think that the way the Celtics are built, it's designed to get them past them.
Right. One team I feel really bad for, one franchise, the Milwaukee Bucks. Now they lose Dame Lillard indefinitely. All signs point him missing the rest of the year because blood clots typically take 2-3 months to recover from. Blood clots in his calf. Now they're fading to number 6 in the East now as a result. I see that staying that way at this point. I gotta tell you, so they won the finals in 2021, won the championship. I mean, people forget that. And since then, they have not had a chance to defend that title. And it's now the 4th year in a row. You know, there's always been some injury, key injury, that's preventing them from defending that title. 2022 was Chris Middleton. 2023 was Giannis getting hurt for a part of that series with Miami. Okay. Last year was Giannis and Dame missing time. Giannis missed the entire series because Indiana. Dame missed, I think, the back half of that series. And now this year, it looks like Dame Lillard's going to be out again with the blood clots. I mean, this is a bad jinx, man. I feel so terrible for the Bucks and their fans and for Giannis. And I wonder now with this, because their window was already limited as is anyway. They weren't even like obviously you still have to consider them as a fringe title contender because you have Giannis, top 3 player in the league. You still have Dame Lillard when you still having a good year. They got a good roster. Kyle Kuzma's been playing decent with them since that trade. So they're a team in the mix. Although we will probably still take Boston and Cleveland ahead of them, and maybe New York gets 2 also if we get feeling lucky. But at this point, if you're Milwaukee, what do you do? Like, do you start considering blowing it up now? Because Giannis ain't getting any younger, and the window it's shrinking, and the East at least on top has gotten better. Like Milwaukee was thought of for the last couple of years as that it was them in Boston, you know. Now I'm the one that you talk about anymore. They're just one of those teams in the Eastern Conference that's the second tier team in the Eastern Conference. If you're Milwaukee, do you start considering blowing it up?
Yeah, it's a hard question because they don't really have assets to improve upon this core. Like the core kind of is what it is. And I don't think that, like, if you told me that Dame wasn't going to play in the playoffs, which I don't think that he should, you know, it's funny. I was listening to Doc Rivers last night and he made it sound like, oh, well, they haven't ruled him out yet.
Right.
And it's like, look, from a player safety and caring about your guys' point of view, you pretty much have to shut him down because how is that going to look if he comes back too soon and then has like a Chris Bosh situation where, like, you know, like the league will look at that and be like, we can't trust this franchise. So, I mean, like, I feel like Dame's done for the year. Even with Giannis, I still feel like they could be a challenge because you still have a lot of guys on that roster who, even if you're not a believer in Kyle Kuzma, you know, and he's been okay, you know, he's had his moments, you know, it's the Kyle Kuzma experience. He has, even within the game, he does things that are wild and you can't believe it. And then he'll do something good. And it's like, oh, wow, I can't believe he did that either. So, but I mean, look, they've got, you know, Lopez is playing well. You still have Giannis, you have Gary Trent, you got AJ Green, you know, you've got Kevin Porter Jr. has been a really good pickup for them. So, I mean, as long as you have Giannis, I feel like you're in contention. If you're blowing it up, what are you blowing it up for? Like, are you blowing it up just to get draft picks? Or are you blowing it up to like swap Giannis for another star? I mean, like, I've always said that the team that if you're looking at for a trade partner would probably be Houston, not just for Giannis, but for Booker, for Durant, for any of those teams, because they've got the Phoenix draft and they've got all these young players. You know, I mean, even a guy like Reed Shepherd is probably enticing to a team that's looking to rebuild based on how highly regarded he was going to the draft. And I mean, there doesn't seem to be a market for him right now in Houston. I know he's hurt. He has a thumb injury, but he wasn't playing all year under Ime Udoka anyway. So it's not like he was contributing to winning. Like, does a package of Jabari Smith, Reed Shepherd, Tari Eason, and like 3 Suns picks that are considered gold, like, do those move the needle for a team like Milwaukee? Like, I don't know that I look at Milwaukee as just taking picks, like, or do you look at a team like the Knicks and say, oh, you know, if they flame out in the first round, does like a Towns for Giannis swap work because they don't want to rebuild, like they don't want to rip it down to the studs, they still want to be competitive, and that's probably the best that you can do. Does that kind of swap work? You know, I have no idea. You know, I mean, those are the kind of deals they'd be looking at for him. Is, you know, you look at a team like Brooklyn, they really don't have players. They just have picks. So it's like, do you want 7 picks? And then what's the market for Dame? Because then you've got to trade Dame. You've got to trade everybody at that point. Like, you basically need to do what the Wizards are doing if you're going to take that path. So, I mean, I feel like if they were going to move him, they're probably looking at getting other players back for him, because it probably isn't enticing to rip it down to the studs, given that, where you are now, Giannis is still a top 3 player in the league. You don't then want to go from having a top 3 player who's played his entire career there, prodigal son, to now.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Now we're the Wizards. So,
yeah, I don't think their situation is as dire as Philadelphia's. I think Philadelphia's situation is really dire because you have 2 guys that are, Embiid is 30, but he's an old 30, and that body ain't getting better. Paul George is older, and that bad contract. I wouldn't call Giannis a bad contract, because it's top 5 player in the league. Damian Lillard, obviously even healthy, and it wasn't even about a health. This is literally a life and death situation. It's not even about like him spraining his ankle here. It's just one of those freak things that happen that, But Milwaukee was still not even a team we considered really at the top 2 of the East, because of we didn't think they were good enough, because of where Boston's at, where Cleveland's at right now, and New York, if Thibodeau gets head of his ass, where they're at too also. So, with Milwaukee, I don't think blow it up. I think you ride this out another year, because those guys are good enough. It's still one of the better tandems in the league. But I do think, though, next year is the all-in year, I think, for Milwaukee. I think this is where you start really having questions about the future in a real way. So I feel bad, though, because I love Giannis, man. I want him to get another ring. And it's not going to happen this year, obviously, now with the situation, certainly even before that. But now with Dame being out, probably for the rest of the year, it's not going to help out. But, yeah, I think next year will be the only year. And look, Doc Rivers gets another excuse now. There's no excuse. One more year, excuses.
Yeah, I mean, and you mentioned Philly, like, their situation is dire for a different reason. Like, it's dire because, like, you don't know if Embiid's ever going to play again. Or if he is he going to be a shell of himself because his knees are shot?
Yeah.
Like, I would assume that come October, Dame will be fine to play.
Right.
I mean, based
it's
on
it's a calf's clot. And calf's better than anywhere else.
Yeah. So I mean, if Giannis is there, if Dame's there, if they fill in the pieces around them, I mean, Kuzma's contract, like, they actually saved some money, which gave them a little more flexibility.
It's a de-escalating contract too, also.
Yeah, when they traded Middleton for him, so that gave them a little more flexibility, and they could even turn around and trade him. I mean, so they have a couple options, and their options don't include guys that like just can't play anymore. Like, I mean, Embiid is probably a top 5 player in the league when he's healthy, and he might never play again. So, I mean, that's dire for a different situation, for a different reason. Their situation's different. But still not a good situation, given that they haven't had a healthy playoff run since 21, basically.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right, last, get you out of here. College basketball. Sweet 16 starts today. Is it today or tonight? Tonight, right?
It's tonight. The first game is on at 7 or 7:15.
Okay. Yeah. How's your bracket looking?
Pretty good, actually. I mean, I have Tennessee winning. I think I told you that.
The whole thing?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know that they're actually going to win, but the reason why I picked them is just because they're so good defensively. Like, they're one of the best defensive teams in the country.
Okay.
I think I was maybe heartened a little bit by seeing how much Florida struggled with UConn. So, I mean, maybe that gives me a chance there.
But UConn's a prideful team, champions, the whole nine.
Yeah, the easy pick would have been just to take Duke because they're loaded with NBA players. But I mean, they're all young. Do they run into a team that is good and can play defense? Again, I have no idea. But these things are so unpredictable when you look at some of these games. I mean, like, you look at Maryland winning on a last-second shot. I mean, that's the difference between maybe them going to the Elite Eight and being bounced earlier than what anyone would have expected. So it's a little unpredictable with college players, although maybe it's more predictable now with the NIL. And I don't think we're going to see as many upsets as we've seen in the past, just given that most of these players are getting paid. So most of the good players are getting paid.
Well, I'm eyeballing Arkansas. Arkansas is the Cinderella right now team, I think, of the entire bracket now. Yeah,
and one point on Arkansas that I didn't mention them when we did our last pod, but that they deserve, well, I shouldn't say they deserve a lot of credit for. I guess they kind of do. But like, Bookie Fland was ruled out for the year, like in like January. Like, it was like earlier in the year, and he's projected to be a top 10 pick. he could have just checked out the rest of the year. He came back in their last game. So, I mean,
Mhm.
like, he didn't have to come back. He could have just checked out and started getting ready for the NBA draft and still been, a top 15, top 20 pick. But, like, he came back to try and see if they could do something. And it's not like he had a great game against St. John's, but, like, his presence helped. And
Right.
if they're getting a little healthier as this thing goes on, like, you never know. That would be like a dark horse situation where it's like good coach or, a coach who's had success in March Madness before in Calipari and, obviously has good players. And now you have an NBA player coming back. Like, that'll be an interesting game to watch.
Yeah. So you had Tennessee on one side of the bracket. Who's the other team you had facing Tennessee?
My Final Four was Florida, Duke, Tennessee, and
Michigan State.
Yeah, I believe it was Michigan State.
So I had 3 to 4. I had Michigan State, also Duke, Florida, but I had Purdue actually my wild card.
Okay.
And
yeah.
So my Final Four is still alive.
But the funny thing is about Purdue is that they're playing Houston, and Houston's a number 1 seed, but they're playing them in Indiana. So it's like Houston actually got kind of a bad draw by having to play Purdue basically in Purdue's like home gym. I mean, it's,
So you're saying you're saying I made the right move. Good, thank you very much.
Well, I'm saying that if you're looking for an upset, that I think that the crowd could help them.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to Sweet 16. I'm not the biggest college basketball fan like I used to be, but I'm looking forward to this Sweet 16. I'll be locked in. Today's a great day. Today's actually one of the most underrated sports days in the calendar. Opening day baseball. Can't wait to watch the Mets later on. Obviously Sweet 16 going on. There's always obviously the NBA, going on as well to watch. So I'm looking forward to today. Anyway, follow Greg on Twitter on X/Twitter at Gee Hrinya. That's GHRINYA NBA. Yes, I got it right this time without even having to ask you. And any last thoughts? Any final thoughts?
No, I'm just looking forward to the basketball later, both college and pro, and seeing how both seasons end.
Yeah, absolutely. Of course, follow the podcast on any podcast catcher on the audio side. YouTube at Earnestly Pod on YouTube. On TikTok, clips of the show at TikTok at Earnestly Pod as well too. Also, and until the next episode, we will talk soon.